Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been a lot of talk about the differences between the way younger people and older people respond and react to the guidelines and the protocols. A Brock professor, Tony Volk, joins us now from their Child and Youth Studies faculty, and he says it's not all just talk. Tony, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Child and Youth Studies, this particular study, though, is not focusing on child and youth so much as young adults, aged 24 to 35. Why did you decide to do this study?
It's a good question. We started this back last May when the lockdown was in place, and there was already discussions about who was following it, who wasn't. And so we looked at the data in Europe when they actually had more to go on than we did. And it seemed that it wasn't, the young children or even the early teenagers who weren't following. It was really young adults in places like Italy and Spain that were breaking the rules. So we decided to do a study here in North America and see if we saw similar kinds of patterns and individual differences in why they were doing it.
And you did indeed find that, and a lot of it dealt with, I believe I saw the word conscientiousness quite a bit in your press release. Can you explain what you found?
Yeah, so on the one hand, some of it's really common sense. Some of it is kind of surprising. I'll go with the surprising bit first. The conventional wisdom was that people who are extroverts would really miss people and be longing to go out, whereas introverts would be fine. And then that the reason people were breaking the rules is that they were tired, they had COVID fatigue, they were angry. And what we found was those explanations didn't hold at all for younger adults. This is the perhaps not surprising bit, that of the young adults who were breaking the rules, many didn't, but of the ones who did, it was because they had a selfish and short-term outlook. So basically, I'm going to worry about what's going to make me happy today, because who cares about tomorrow? Which,
I think that's a big factor during those ages, 24 to 35, in regular life. I mean, you are trying to find your way in life, maybe your first job, and you're trying to basically start your life yourself. So you are becoming a little bit more selfish, and COVID wouldn't change that.
Absolutely. And that was maybe a bias to think that it wouldn't, because what we see, we see some of these videos of people reacting negatively in stores, et cetera. They tend to be older adults who are reacting with anger, but that's not what we see in young adults. And of course, it's really important now that we understand why young adults are doing it, so we can effectively try and intervene on reducing COVID.
Your study also found some interesting information about income levels and the disparity between males and females. Can you explain those?
Sure. So we didn't just look at negative behaviors, we also looked at positive coping mechanisms. And not surprisingly, young adults who were wealthier had more positive coping responses. And in particular, they had it through good social connections. So it makes sense that if you've got a nice big backyard, or even if you have your own car, the stability to not have to worry about working, all those financial advantages meant that these people were able to draw more support from their friends and family and therefore experience less stress. The opposite, of course, is young adults who are really struggling financially didn't have the time or the resources to go seek out that social support that we really need. So that's a very important difference for us to consider going forward.
You found some differences between males and females. Males, you came out as saying, live a little bit more recklessly in general, which I think we know, but related to COVID, you found that that was the case.
Yeah, again, some of these things seem familiar, and that's a good thing, and that they make sense, that men were more likely to break the rules because of that selfish live for the day moment. Girls were more likely to have problems, young adult women were more likely to have problems with high levels of emotionality, which is anxiety and concern. And if they had really high levels of that, it could make them engage in these risky behaviors. So even though, yes, it kind of fits as women being worriers and men being the risk takers, it's important if we're going to try and craft messages that target people to change their behavior, that we have the right messages for the right people.
Tony, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for doing the study and imparting that information to us here on The Source today.
My pleasure.